So we know Greg Williams will not be back in 2021, but what does the rest of that Jets coaching situation look like? It's widely believed at this point that Adam Gase will not be back in 2020, but what does the rest of that coaching situation look like?
I think I got a better chance of waking up tomorrow with a full head of hair than Adam Gase does of coaching the New York Jets in 2021. But I had a conversation with someone today, and we spoke at length. This was an incredible source. And what I was told is they believe that Joe Douglas will get the job done if he's given the chance. Doesn't mean that they're going to fire Joe Douglas. They're not going to fire Joe Douglas. But what I'm hearing with the Jets right now is the Jets are going to look for an alpha dog coach. They're going to be looking for a big name, a strong personality, rather than, say, bringing in a Joe Brady type. That's what I'm hearing right now. There obviously is a name or two in the building. I've not been able to grab hold of that name. But from what I'm hearing, the Jets are going to go for a big name coach, or at least an alpha dog, a strong personality to be the head coach of the team. And why not? I mean, that's what they've needed since Rex Ryan. That's what they've needed since Bill Parcells.
So let me ask you this. We don't know what jobs are going to be open for, in the NFL this year. We have an idea of some of them. We know some of them for a fact already, but how how valuable is this Jets coaching job? We know that they potentially have the number one pick in the draft with a ultra potential star in Trevor Lawrence coming out in next year's draft. They have a lot of draft capital. They made some trades. Jamal Adams is gone, things like that. They potentially have a franchise left tackle and Mekhi Becton if he can stay healthy moving forward. There's not a ton of pieces there, but there's a lot of things that they can build around. Is this going to be a job that, high-end coaches want, or because the Jets have been the Jets for the last however long now, are, high-end coaches going to want to stay away?
I think a lot will have to do with the interviews with the owners and how involved the owners want to remain in the day-to-day decision-making or the general decision-making of the franchise. I'm going to throw this out there, and this is pure speculation on my behalf. But it is kind of coincidental that you hear Boomer Esiason, a Long Island guy who played for the Jets, who's close with the organization, all of a sudden starting to say that Bill Cowher may want to get back into the coaching ranks, get back onto the field. That's speculation on my behalf. Don't say that Tony Pauline is reporting Bill Cowher is going to be is the front runner for head coach for New York Jets. I'm not saying that at all. I just find it very coincidental that Esiason said that last week. And I'm hearing that the Jets are going to look for an alpha dog as far as a head coach is concerned.
That would be an interesting name. It's always interesting when some of these coaches, who haven't coached in a really long time end up coming out. Worked well for Dick Vermeil, if I remember correctly. Did not work so well for Joe Gibbs. Those are the two names that come to my head immediately. But, you never know what's going to happen. And Bill Cowher is certainly somebody that has massive respect around the league and was always, a coach that got his teams in the playoffs. And more than anything, he would bring a level of respect and everything like that to the organization.
And he's the strong personality that an organization like the Jets need, a no-nonsense sort of guy that basically knows how to run an organization or run a team and basically lay down the law. It'll be interesting to see. There's obviously a few names floating within the facility. Haven't been able to really put my thumb on them yet.
All right. Well, you have a homework assignment, Tony. That's your assignment for next week. All right. Let's stick with coaching, though, because there's a lot of other, potential openings and some hot names out there. I want to start in Chicago, though. It's such an interesting scenario. Certainly that hot seat did not get any, did not cool off at all after a comeback win by the Detroit Lions, of all teams, over the Chicago Bears this past week. What are you hearing, and what's the latest on that Bears coaching position?
Yeah, it looks like they're going to clean house. And someone said to me, Pat Fitzgerald, the head coach of Northwestern, to the Bears is a lot closer or a lot more distinct than a lot of people are talking about or a lot of people believe. Now, Fitzgerald has said a couple times he's not interested in an NFL head coaching job, but you got to wonder at what point in time does Fitzgerald think he's taken the Northwestern program as far as it's going to go. And they're doing a terrific job this year. They're going to be in the Big Ten title game against, obviously, Ohio State. He's not going to be able to recruit the type of players. What I'm hearing, though, is that the Chicago Bears really would like to make overtures to bring Pat Fitzgerald in. He's a player's coach, another no-nonsense guy, coaches, in that city with Northwestern, and really is someone who on the college level anyway, has shown the ability to extract as much talent as possible out of players that you really think wouldn't be competing against the Wisconsins of the world and some of the other Big Ten schools.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And like you said, there's a ceiling at Northwestern. There's only so high you can potentially go. And to be fair, he's brought it very, very high. I think he's brought it to levels that, people didn't necessarily expect that he'd be able to get it to. They've had a really nice season this year, but is this as good as it gets? And at some point, if you're a coach like Pat, Fitzgerald, and an NFL team comes calling, and one of the bigger markets and one of the teams that has a ton of tradition, that is a really tough gig to pass up if you're any head coach, to be head coach of the Chicago Bears. That's something from a Green Bay person, right? By the way,
almost a hometown market, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
in Chicago, and Fitzgerald was a legendary player at Northwestern.
He was, yeah. So that's a really interesting name to keep an eye on. And somebody in the comments corrected me on my Joe Gibbs take from before. They said Joe Gibbs went to the playoffs twice in 4 years under Dan Snyder, and he still has their last playoff win. So maybe Joe Gibbs's reign in Washington wasn't quite as poor as I remember it, at least in comparison to some of the recent Washington football team success, or the lack thereof, I guess. Let's go over another really hot coaching name, and that's Eric Bieniemy. He continues to be a hot name. We mentioned last week that Houston and Atlanta could be front runners for Bieniemy. What's the latest on the Chiefs offensive coordinator?
I'm hearing a lot of coupling between Bieniemy and John Dorsey. John Dorsey obviously being the general manager, and Bieniemy being the head coach of the team. Now, they work together in Kansas City. I'm hearing that Atlanta is a team that is looking potentially to put a big offer in front of them. I'm also told earlier this week that look for Jacksonville to potentially put a big offer to bring in Dorsey as for the GM, and Bieniemy as the head coach, sort of working not one on top of the other, but sort of side by side, if you will. But I'm still hearing Houston is the front runner to hire Eric Bieniemy as the head coach.
And I apologize, I missed this. So would Dorsey go to Houston as well, or would that be a separate deal?
No, the belief is, I've not heard it, but there are media reports there that Dorsey would be going to Houston, or he's interested in a Houston job at least.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So, going back to, Atlanta and Jacksonville, teams who could theoretically be in the market for a quarterback. There's a lot of people who still talk about John Dorsey and selecting Baker Mayfield first overall in that draft. As a team that's picking, early in the draft and potentially taking their franchise quarterback, is that something that they're going to look at with John Dorsey? Now, granted, Baker's been pretty good the last 5-6 weeks, but that's still something that I know comes up a lot when anyone hears John Dorsey's name.
Are you asking if they would go quarterback? Well, Jacksonville's going to go quarterback.
But if they were going quarterback, would they consider that in the equation of bringing Dorsey in?
I think it would have to be how the overall team of Dorsey and Bieniemy works as far as interviews are concerned. The fact is Dorsey's a good football guy. I mean, he is a guy who you look at that Cleveland Brown roster right now, and a lot of it is John Dorsey. Even things like bringing Wyatt Teller in, making a trade for a late round pick for Wyatt Teller, who's having a terrific season. So, Dorsey's got his pros and cons, but the basis of it and the foundation of it is he's still a good football guy, and he's still a good talent evaluator.
Yeah, I think if you could pair those two together, you're getting a sound talent evaluator who's put together teams in the past, who's kind of built them from scratch and kind of rebuilt that Cleveland Browns team to an extent. And then, obviously somebody in Eric Bieniemy, who's one of the hot names, who's worked with Andy Reid. It certainly seems like it could be a match that would work for a variety of different teams and could work for any of those teams listed. Are there any other coaching names that you're hearing for Atlanta, Jacksonville, Houston, or right now is it kind of the Dorsey Bieniemy show that people are looking at?
That's it right now. It seems like that's the sweepstakes are for Bieniemy, with Dorsey to come along with him.
All right. Any other thoughts on Dorsey from around the league?
He's not a people person. He's a real good talent evaluator. I remember him, in the early 1990s when he was an area scout for the Green Bay Packers.
Yep.
And he's basically worked his way up. I think what happens is he gets when he tries to run the whole organization in the general manager capacity, gets a little bit too stretched out, sometimes rubs some people the wrong way. But if you're looking for a guy just to feed you information on the players and evaluate players, especially in the draft, does a terrific job. That is the feeling about Dorsey in the league as well.
And when you have that many potential GM openings, it just makes sense. Sometimes it's really tough to take a chance on new people who haven't been in that role before. Somebody that has a proven track record is certainly somebody that's going to get a look when you have that many openings.
And I go back to what I said about the Jets with, looking for the alpha dog coach, or potentially what I'm hearing, looking for the alpha dog coach. Same situation where, the enemy is basically going to run the show, where he's hired and will use Dorsey as his talent evaluator, general manager per se, as far as player evaluations and things of that sort.